Any dogmatic position which holds that Indo-European or any other of the traditional families of Eurasia is clearly genetically isolated is as unjustified and intellectually barren as the opposite extreme. Welcome to part 2 of our investigation into one of the proposed parent languages of Proto-Indo-European, namely Indo-Uralic. In the first video, we went over some of the history and the names behind the hypothesis. Towards the end of the video, we looked at some of the more convincing arguments behind the hypothesis, and today we're going to dive deeper into those ideas. Now, to begin with, let's just take a moment and have a look at the Indo-Uralic language tree model as proposed by Caucasian and Pronk. So obviously we have Proto-Indo-Uralic at the top, which splits into Proto-Uralic and Proto-Indo-Anatolian. This term here, Proto-Indo-Anatolian, is the, can we say, traditional grouping of Indo-European because it includes both the Anatolian and Tocharian branches. Then subsequently the Anatolian languages break off, followed by Tocharian, leaving a node with the remainder of the Indo-European languages, termed core Indo-European. Pretty fascinating stuff, right? Now, only time will tell whether this form of the Indo-European tree, or should I say the Indo-Uralic tree, will actually become the mainstream representation of the language family. Let's take a look at some of the supporting arguments behind this tree model. But before jumping into those arguments, let's first take a moment to revisit some of the researchers and their work highlighted in part 1. We explored 2 recent works regarding the Indo-Uralic hypothesis, namely the Precursors of Proto-Indo-European, published in 2019. This book amalgamated the insights of several renowned figures in the field, including Pero, Krunen, Klemencic and Kallio, among others, with editing by Caucasian and Pronk. Frederick Cortland, a contributor to this 2019 work, dedicated a portion of his 2011 work, Studies in Germanic Indo-European and Indo-Uralic, to the Indo-Uralic hypothesis. Cortland's theories and how they bridge the gap in thought between early research on language macrofamilies and the Indo-Uralic hypothesis will play a pivotal role in the upcoming discussion. With that said, let's take a look at interrogatives. First in Indo-European, and how they are often said to be paralleled in the Uralic family. According to Pero, alongside the primary Proto-Indo-European interrogative stem variants, we have another stem, the M stem. This stem is well known amongst students of Tocharian or the Anatolian languages, but is often overlooked elsewhere as it is largely absent from the remaining branches. Pero has dedicated a lot of time into the investigation of interrogative stems in Tocharian and Anatolian, including a dedicated paper on the matter. Take a look at these Anatolian interrogatives. To these 3, we could perhaps also add this one, meaning and or but. Pero is reluctant to add it to the list as there needs to be several changes in meaning. However, I think it's reasonable to add to the list. According to Caucasian, all of these forms are based on this Proto-Indo-European stem. In Tocharian, we have the following examples. Pero gives the meaning of this Proto-Indo-European form as being something close to which, and states that one example found outside of the Tocharian and Anatolian branches may possibly be the Old Irish ma. Therefore, in terms of Proto-Indo-European interrogatives, we have the following. And these forms seem to parallel nicely with Uralic forms. Take a look at this. Perhaps the Indo-Uralic M interrogative was used for things, so answering the question what, and this interrogative was used for people, so answering the question who. The resemblance between Proto-Indo-European and Proto-Uralic interrogatives has long been acknowledged, predating Peyro's recent work in 2018 and 2019, as the author himself has pointed out. Notable researchers highlighting these similarities include Pedersen, Collinder and Greenberg, who have all drawn comparisons. However, there is a nuanced aspect to consider here. Pedersen, renowned for his significant contributions to linguistics, is often remembered for his Nostratic theory, which sought to connect language families more closely related to Indo-European. Pedersen did underscore the particular affinity of the Uralic family with Indo-European, but his Nostratic theory also encompassed language families such as Turkic, Mongolian and Tungusic. And any parallels Pedersen found between Indo-European and Uralic interrogatives need to be considered in the context of his broader theories. Greenberg, decades later, proposed the Eurasiatic language superfamily, which included not only Indo-European and Uralic, but also Turkic, Mongolian, and actually a plethora of languages and language families spanning Europe, Asia, and North America. Greenberg, in his work on the matter in the year 2000, identifies 72 shared features between the language families he identifies as Eurasiatic, most of which are individual look-alike morphemes. The numbering system Greenberg employed was carried over into Cortland's work. Cortland acknowledges some of the weaknesses in Greenberg's work and stresses the difficulty in assessing the validity of the Eurasiatic hypothesis due to the time depth involved. Nevertheless, he uses it as the basis of his investigation into Indo-Uralic and Eurasiatic. In fact, Cortland envisions a language family tree something like this. While these theories are intriguing and could merit their own discussions in separate videos, I won't delve into them too extensively today. But the point is, both Greenberg and Pedersen appear to advocate for a closer relationship between Indo-European and Uralic compared to other language families. However, it's done in the context of their broader macro-language theories, and this raises questions about some of the parallels between Indo-European and Uralic, as they may not be exclusive to these language families. Here we have, for example, some of the interrogative forms found in languages outside of Indo-Uralic, that is, at least according to Greenberg. A lot of recent work on Indo-Uralic is actually based off Greenberg's work on Eurasiatic, meaning that interrogatives aren't just a piece of evidence justifying Indo-Uralic, they could be used to justify other relationships. Even the harshest of critics towards the work of Greenberg acknowledge that some of the correspondences identified probably are due to shared inheritance from a distant proto-language. However, whether they can be used to justify Indo-Uralic as a branch specifically remains unclear. And actually, it goes beyond the so-called Eurasiatic languages. Take a look at this. We can find these morpheme-like parallels in many language families. I chose two that I'm familiar with outside of Indo-European and Uralic, so Quequegowab and Old Akkadian, and managed to find similar interrogatives. Now, of course, this is a rather basic comparison, but you can see my point. At least some aspects of Peyro's interrogatives argument in support of Indo-Uralic are actually parallels which can be observed beyond Indo-European and Uralic. Make of this what you will, and feel free to leave your opinions in the comments. Perhaps more promising is the accusative M. It is one of the more famous correspondences between the Indo-European language family and Uralic, and has been noted since at least Anderson in 1879. Here we have Beaks's overview of the Proto-Indo-European case system, compared with that of Zhivlov's case system for Proto-Uralic. Okay, so as we can see here, it appears we have an uncontroversial parallel between Indo-European and Uralic. Additionally, according to Georg and Vovin, the accusative M is lacking in the other branches of Eurasiatic. So again, this would appear to work in favour of the Indo-Uralic hypothesis, because we have, maybe, evidence of an innovation unique to the Indo-Uralic branch. Or do we? Holopainen in 2020 notes that whilst accusative M is an uncontroversial reconstruction in Proto-Uralic, its origin in Indo-European is believed to have originated as an extension of an earlier allative directive case. Please see the 2019 paper by Puth and colleagues for more on the development of the accusative M in Indo-European. However, I am going to try and give you a rundown of the arguments presented in Puth's paper, but please be warned, this will be a simplification. If you want the meat and the juicy bits of the argument, you'll need to consult the paper. But basically, it goes something like this. Due to the absence of differentiation between subject and object marking in Proto-Indo-European neuter nouns, as we can see here, linguists began to question whether early Proto-Indo-European had a different alignment system than the nominative accusative system we see here. For decades, scholars believed Proto-Indo-European syntax followed an ergative-absolutive alignment, but recent case morphology reconstructions challenge this. Instead, evidence suggests a fluid S system, where case marking is basically driven by semantics. One key feature was an antipassive-like construction, which later evolved into the accusative system seen in Indo-European languages today. This evolution involved reanalyzing the agentive marker S as a subject marker, leading to accusative constructions. So this means that the original function of the S ending was to indicate agency. When the S ending had been reanalyzed as a subject marker, this motivated the allative or directive marker M to be in turn reanalyzed as an accusative. Very interesting stuff, and there are some great reconstructions in the paper, including examples of a few observable relics of this earlier system. So please go and check it out. So this is the case in Indo-European, but what about the Uralic side of things in terms of accusative M? Well, even if the reconstruction of the accusative M in Uralic is uncontroversial, as Holopainen states, and actually no evidence is provided to support this, we still need to demonstrate the function of the what came to be M accusative in Indo-Uralic and how this relates to the function of the accusative case in Uralic daughter languages for parallels between Indo-European and Uralic accusatives to be meaningful. For those who are interested, Bo Wickman in 1955 did a deep dive into the object form in Uralic languages. He was convinced that Proto-Uralic had M accusative, but does acknowledge other dissenting voices. Now, accusative M is not the only case marker believed to be paralleled in Indo-European and Uralic. There are indeed other candidates, such as the potential R locative case marker in Indo-European, with a similar case marker in Uralic. See Bauhaus 2019 for more details. Over the years, linguists have made numerous attempts to reconcile the phonemic inventories of Indo-European and Uralic languages. Bojan Chop, during his academic career, undertook a significant effort in this regard, as detailed in Klemencic 2019. Notably, one of Chop's intriguing propositions was his endeavour to reconstruct the Indo-Uralic vowel system. This task was particularly challenging given that Proto-Uralic is reported to have had 8 or 9 vowels, depending on the source, while Indo-European is said to have had only 2. The contrast between the stop inventories of Proto-Indo-European and Proto-Uralic is actually the opposite of what we see in terms of vowels. Proto-Indo-European exhibits a rich array of stops, while Proto-Uralic demonstrates comparatively fewer observable ones. There is still quite some debate about how to exactly reconstruct the stop system in Proto-Indo-European, but it's probably safe to say that there were at least 12 stops, usually represented in a series of 3, as exemplified by one of the following, with the final sign here representing a glottalic or implosive stop. Or, as we see here, often the final stop in the series is listed as a voiced aspirate, as we saw in Beeks's traditional reconstruction. However, the presence of this implosive stop is significant in the context of Indo-Uralic, as we will see in a moment. In contrast, Proto-Uralic appears to have had only one series of voiceless stops. Scholars like Krunen and Kummel, 2019, have intriguingly speculated that Proto-Indo-Uralic may have shared a similar stop inventory with Proto-Indo-European. They suggest the possibility of a developmental link between the stops and nasals in both language families. According to this hypothesis, Proto-Indo-Uralic implosives may have evolved into a series of sonorants, particularly nasals, in Proto-Uralic, or vice versa, so Proto-Indo-Uralic nasals developed into the stop system of Proto-Indo-European, indicating a dynamic interchange between stop and nasal sounds in the ancestral languages. Here is an overview of the stop system correspondences according to Kummel. And here is a set of potential cognates provided by Krunen. Note that the Indo-Uralic stop system may explain the origin of certain words in the Uralic languages, often considered to be loans from Indo-European. Take a look at these 2 examples according to Kummel. In terms of the lexical resemblances between the Indo-European and Uralic language families, there has long been debate regarding the source of perceived loanwords from Indo-European into Uralic. Blazek in 2005 does make the case for some apparent examples going in the opposite direction. There are essentially, however, 4 positions regarding these similarities. Some see them as direct evidence of shared inheritance from Indo-Uralic. Others see them as an example of intimate language contact at the proto level. Others see it as evidence for language contact on the level of sub-branches. And finally, some see the similarities as mere chance resemblances. Undoubtedly, for these lexical resemblances to be relevant in terms of the Indo-Uralic hypothesis, we need more work to be undertaken in terms of the reconstruction of the Indo-Uralic sound system, particularly in the context of the proposals put forward by Kummel and Krunen. Well, this video is getting quite long, so I think I'm going to call it a day here. We might actually need a part 3. I'd like to stress that some of the ideas we've talked about today really do represent only the tip of the iceberg in terms of correspondences between Indo-European and Uralic. And I'm sure some of you might be a little bit disappointed because I didn't get round to talking about some of the other correspondences, or perhaps I didn't go into enough detail. However, don't worry, that's why I can make a part 3. Please let me know in the comments what you would like to hear more about or what you would like a deeper dive into. I also think it's important to stress that whilst there are many critics of the Indo-Uralic hypothesis, most of them do say that some of the correspondences between the Indo-European and Uralic families probably are from inheritance. The question is, how do the Indo-European and Uralic languages relate to each other in the wider Eurasiatic context? And whether these analyses going so far back in time can ever yield us with anything meaningful. It might be worth repeating the words of Georg and Vovin from the beginning of this video, that it is highly unlikely that Indo-European is genetically isolated. Well, that's all from me for today. I really do hope you've enjoyed this video. I've been Learn Hittite. You've been fantastic as always. Please do remember to leave me a like and a subscribe and share this video with anybody that you think might be interested in this type of content. I'll be back very soon with another interesting video. Goodbye for now.